Perhaps one of the strangest things about 2019 has definitely been all the hardware talk. Normally, when it comes to just video game news and stuff that gets gamers excited, normally it's just things that are basically the latest cool thing to play. The greatest disc that we all want to put in our consoles and play the absolute heck out of. But what's going on now is a little bit more peculiar because it seems like there's just an absolute flood of leaks, rumors, schematics, and patents about things that are going to be released possibly very, very soon. Things like a Nintendo Switch Mini or a Switch Pro. But what gets me going the most is all the talk about just the raw details of the PlayStation 5 and next Xbox. But it sounds like Microsoft themselves is still having some internal debates as to what exactly this will be. What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, and I want to talk about the things that have been coming out over the course of the last 72 hours, which is that apparently Microsoft is now canceling one of their next generation Xboxes, and honestly, I think that this is a very good thing. So if we rewind the clock a little bit and talk about 2018, when Microsoft took the stage at E3, they were very, very open about the fact that they're working on not just one version of the next generation Xbox, but multiple. This was going to be a family. Project Scarlett, as we're now calling it, is more than just a singular device. And what's funny is that they were actually pretty open talking about code names and stuff. In several different interviews and other things like that, there came out to be two separate things. There was basically going to be two separate Xboxes that are currently in full development for the next generation. Project Lockhart and Project Anaconda. Now apparently, Project Lockhart, the idea was that this was going to be the accessibility machine. It was going to be the budget version of the next Xbox that would have less power, less internal storage, but overall cost you maybe half the price or something. Maybe be like $100 cheaper. And then Project Anaconda would be the premium gaming experience. Basically, it sounds like the idea was to release an Xbox One and an Xbox One X on the same day. That way, anybody who's willing to pay more gets a better experience, but everybody gets to play the same next-gen games. Now, I very clearly was worried about this as soon as this news came out, mostly because I do not like the idea of separate consoles, but mostly because of the development aspect. A lot of game developers have a saying which is aim low, scale high, which means that if you're trying to program something for multiple consoles, you aim for the weakest one first to make sure it will run on that perfectly, and then you scale up. You make it where it runs better on the new consoles, but obviously it's not completely broken on old school tech. This is something we've seen a couple times with things like when there's cross-generational games like Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider. We also saw this again, of course, with things like when the original Titanfall came out. It was released on the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, but if you see the leap between Titanfall 1 and Titanfall 2 graphically and physics-wise, you can tell that when they started developing purely for next-gen tech, obviously they were able to utilize a lot of different systems that previously were impossible. Well, now, as of this weekend, we've been seeing a lot of talk internally that Microsoft has decided to cancel this lower tier console. Yes, this is real, and honestly, I'm very, very happy about it. It sounds like they're going to only have a bigger PlayStation 5 tile thing. They're going to have one major console. Now, the reason I'm saying PlayStation 5 randomly is because I think that Xbox was originally going to try and diversify their brand right at the onset. Alright, we're going to have a bunch of different Xbox 2s. You can get this one or this one and get this expensive console or this expensive controller. And I think that they realized that PlayStation 5 is going to be trying to do ultra straightforward. It sounds like the PlayStation 5's main idea is like, alright, just drop a console. Don't do any fireworks, don't do anything spectacular, just make the best gaming device. Now, this is speculation, but I do think that what's going on right now is that both of these next-gen pieces of hardware are not yet complete. There are just so many articles going around right now talking about the power of the PlayStation 5 versus the Xbox 2, and some publications are claiming that Microsoft is better, and some publications are claiming that Sony is going to be a powerhouse. And a lot of people are confused as to how these systems can still have so much up in the air. And well, to me, it seems like what's clearly going on is that both of these machines are not yet complete. The PlayStation 5 is not done. The Xbox Scarlett is not done. These are still very heavily in development. Now, the reason I say that is because we are possibly still 16 months away from release. These things are probably going to be coming out holiday 2020, or at the very least, probably another November release. So I bet what they're trying to do is they're still trying to internally experiment to see just how strong they can make this stuff for how cheap. Now, I bet they have a very tight idea what they want. They have their target graphical options already locked in, but they're trying to basically experiment to see, all right, how much can we pack into this console for the lowest cost? Now, no matter what, it's pretty clear that these systems are going to be still pretty expensive. I've seen rumors that the next generation may be $500 or $600 at launch, which is unfortunate. But when I think about the fact that Microsoft was originally going to possibly have something where, imagine if what they tried to do next generation is really think about if Microsoft had attempted to have a $300 Xbox 2 and also a $500 Xbox 2. Now, this is completely theoretical. I'm sure some Xbox person is going to get mad at me for even saying this, but think if they tried to do that. Honestly, I think that this would have been a very bad mistake that could have hurt the entire gaming industry, but here's why I mean that. If they had tried to have a very low budget machine that's stronger than the Xbox One X, but a very small half step, and then simultaneously a giant mega machine that would have cost, 1.5 times the cost or whatever, I think that what would have ended up happening is this would have put a very inefficient benchmark on game makers. Basically, if there are 10 million people who have the lowest tier console, they're going to have to start focusing their development on the lowest tier console. I think that this would have been very expensive, and it would have made games on every other machine look worse. Yes, I'm being serious. If they released a dramatically underpowered Xbox 2 that actually had basically the biggest sales, PlayStation 5 games would have looked worse. Now, this is only a small thing. Honestly, the biggest reason that I'm actually happy that they canceled this is because I really believe that it's going to cut development costs. Right now, there is a topic that just completely drives me nuts, which is so many of these giant mega corporations that make billions of dollars talk about how expensive games are to make. Like, that's the reason that Electronic Arts constantly just defends the idea of microtransactions. We gotta put loot crates and stuff. It's the only way we can make a profit. Well, I think that this is a good move because it's making a point to show that Microsoft is attempting to do their very best to keep games cheap. Microsoft is currently talking to developers, they're buying indie studios, they're funding projects themselves, and simultaneously, it's pretty clear that Microsoft right now is trying to get as many studios underneath their umbrella as possible. And I think that what they're doing is, along with trying to hire a lot of these talented people, they're being receptive. And I think a lot of people are telling them, hey, if you make more tiers of a console, that costs us more money. We have to spend more in development because we need more QA testers, we need more programmers, we need more possibly different artists to try and handle a super Xbox 2 and a low tier Xbox 2. So the fact that they're just going for a singular middle ground, in my opinion, is going to be a good way to keep games cheaper. I'm hoping that the next generation is very, very good, but one of my biggest concerns is the fact that we are going to see another price jump. Back in the day, obviously, I remember back when games cost $50 each, and then they jumped to $60 each, and I do worry that going into this next generation, we're going to see games become 70 or 80 American dollars. Now that may not be a ton to some people, but to others that is an unfathomably high cost. And if you live in other countries like in Canada, this probably means that every game is going to be $100 or $110. The people who live in Australia and are already dealing with like $100 games could be paying $130 because of this rising development cost, which to me seems to be a little bit fictional, a little bit made up, a little bit just of a big freaking deceit by the industry itself. Microsoft is doing their best to listen to feedback. They know that the next generation needs to go off absolutely perfect. They're doing their best to make the games accessible, and for that, I genuinely salute them. Microsoft, you're making the right moves. Thank you for not trying to dilute your own freaking audience. I'm definitely going to be buying the next Xbox day one. I don't care what it costs. I'm curious to see what that machine is. As long as it's not too streaming based. If it's just an xCloud machine, well, honestly, I'll be very unhappy. But what do you think? Have you liked the idea of the Xbox Anaconda and the Xbox Lockhart? Rest in peace. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Man, I'm really hoping we get an official reveal at some points. There's just been so many leaks and rumors about this stuff. At this point, I just want to see a box. I want to see a controller. I want to see something physical in a developer's hands that says this is the beginning of the next generation. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.